are back again with another Sunday So Up, where we recap Sunday's message and kind of break down what was talked about this morning. And our awesome interns run that and kill that every week, so we love them for that. But before we get started, we do want to do our fun question for today. And so this weekend is the 4th of July, America. And we are so pumped. If you don't know, we are a very patriotic group of interns. And so we wanted to ask them, what is your favorite thing about the 4th of July?
So I think my favorite thing about the 4th of July is we have a lake house up on Lake OBJ. And every 4th of July, all the neighbors come around in their golf carts and we dress them up in a whole bunch of 4th of July gear, and we have a parade around the neighborhood. It's a lot of fun.
My favorite thing is fireworks. They're so fun and so bright and colorful. Love them.
I'm being honest, again, I do not remember the 4th of July. I'm patriotic, I love America, but
Questionable.
favorite thing, probably sparklers. Long story short, I almost caught my shirt on fire last year because I love them so much. So hopefully that doesn't happen again this year, but good memory.
My favorite thing about 4th of July is America itself, celebrating the greatest country in the world. We are number one. Gets me fired up every year. Let's go.
I love the 4th of July. And on top of that, we have two other holidays. So July 2nd is JP's birthday. So make sure to blow up his Instagram, the Book of the Face, the Chat of the Snap. Let him know you love him.
MySpace.
It's all there. And then also July 4th is Kinsler's birthday. So make sure to blow up Michaela's social media stuff and let him know how much you love him. Cutest kid ever. And Colby. Oh my gosh. All right. Before I get on a tangent about that though, we started a new series called God and Sinner Reconciled by our church plant pastor, Charles Wright. And so Noah's actually going to recap kind of what we talked about last week.
I am. So last week we kind of talked about like what the multi-ethnic church is and why is it so important for us to actually practice this and like how all churches should be like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So he continued that discussion this morning, and so I'm going to read Ephesians 2, 1 through 10, and then we'll kind of get into our discussion. All right, Ephesians 2, 1 through 10. And you were dead in the trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh, carrying out the desires of the body and the mind, and were by nature children of wrath like the rest of mankind. But God, being rich in mercy because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised up with him, and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace and kindness towards us in Christ Jesus. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Awesome.
So good.
Awesome passage. So our first question, which is our first question every week, is what was your main takeaway from this morning's message?
So my main takeaway from the message this morning was that Pastor Charles said that reconciliation is change, and change is needed to break down all the walls in between us so that we can all come together and be that perfect church that God intended us to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I took away was when Charles had talked about God being the God of initiation, and God initiates coming down and building that relationship with us. And I think a lot of times I think, I chose Jesus, I chose that, but really he called me first. And so he made me, he called me, and so I think that's so beautiful to think of and like humbling that I had nothing to do with it, but God chose me. And so that's awesome.
I think for me, like he talked a lot about the heart, right? And we talk about the heart a lot, and how a lot of times that's one of the main points where that's like where issues lie, right? And it reminded me of this verse, Matthew 6:21, and it says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And so it's saying that like where our heart is and what our heart desires, that's everything else is gonna flow from that, right? That's how we're gonna act, and that's where our habits are gonna come from, and that's ultimately like how we're gonna live things out is based on what our heart is and where that's at. And so making sure that our heart is focused on Christ, and so that we can continue to live that out to the fullest that we can.
One of my main takeaways is like I like how Charles is like each sermon he's kind of given a new definition to reconciliation, like how it all flows. This week he said we don't achieve reconciliation. Like we can try to go out and like I'm gonna reconcile, I'm gonna practice reconciliation, but it's like ultimately like Christ already did that. We just have to follow in his footsteps. So that really stuck out to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what are the things you tend to be influenced by the most, and how has that changed because of Jesus?
I'll go for that one. So, Pastor Charles said that we're influenced by many things. We're influenced by people, items, and social statuses. So one thing that I would say I'm really influenced by is the views of other people. So when I go out into my day and I'm just walking around, I'll think of like, oh, how does that stranger view me? Or how does this person that I know view me? Am I doing everything okay? Like, am I dressed okay? Am I like doing everything that I need to do? Like, I'm very much influenced by what other people think of me and instead of by what God thinks of me.
Yeah. I think for me it's kind of in the same realm, but like I would say relationships. And I think like there's kind of 3 different aspects that you could talk about in that. And like the first one is, right, we talk a lot about of like making sure that you're surrounding yourself with godly people and people that are going to help you, right, and going to push you and grow you, but love you at the same time in your walk with Christ. And so that's one way that has changed right after I've accepted Christ, is making sure that I am being surrounded by those people. And those are my inner circle people, as we say. And then I think the second part is how I act in a relationship, right? So how I treat other people in those relationships. Am I loving them like Christ loved me in an example? And then lastly, kind of like we've been talking about, is making sure that we have relationships with everyone, right? Being intentional to go out and make relationships and get to know people and listen to everyone. And so like Charles said, that God initiated the relationship with us, right? And so it's our job to go out and initiate those relationships with others and not just focus on maybe like people that look like us or act the same, but everybody, and love everybody the same. So
That's awesome, guys. So how can we live out the reality of reconciliation and display an urgency to walk, worship, and work together?
That's a big question. But I think there's a lot in that we can dig through. One thing I took out is the reality of reconciliation. And so the reality of that is your whole heart is changed, your whole self. So he talked about like mind, emotions, will, and conscience. And I think a lot of times I'll have one of those in check, but then like my emotions, I won't feel compassion towards others when I should. Or my mind, I'll think thoughts that I shouldn't be thinking. And so we have to have that whole thing be reconciled and aligned with Jesus. And I think that is super important and super hard, but we can do it. And then the second part of this question, the urgency part, we should be doing it now, like urgently. We should be aligning our heart with Jesus and sharing it to others in our work, in our worship, and in our just being together. I think it's super important that we do that. So yeah.
One thing that I really want to like point out in this question is the word urgency. And urgency can be like a tricky word in this time, being away from everybody. But like really, like, okay, starting off, reconciliation is a change of relationship, right? So we should be able to treat others like Jesus always. If we're gonna follow Jesus and his ministry of reconciliation, we need to treat people like how Jesus would treat them always, no matter what we're doing, whether we're just like hanging with the guys or girls are hanging out, like it's like you have to act like Jesus would always. That's the urgent. We still have communication with people, like we're like, oh, we're quarantined, but like really, like you're still talking to people like nonstop. So be that light always. It's an urgent matter. Like we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised to the end of this day. Be that light always to that person. And the reconciliation part, I mean, like no matter if they look like this or not, like it doesn't matter. They're a child of God just like we are. So it's an urgent matter now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, guys. Y'all killed those questions. Seriously, that's awesome. And so that's what we encourage you guys is that, right, like reconciliation can't happen apart from the gospel. And ultimately the gospel should change your heart. And in turn, when your heart's changed, your heart for people should change. And so that's what we want to encourage you guys is to allow the gospel to change your heart. And in turn, allow that to change how you act in relation with others. But before we head out, we do have a couple announcements. The first is that we do have our live stream this Wednesday night. If you didn't watch last week's, we had Kyle Coleman back, and he did amazing, and we're super excited to be a part of seeing him off to Germany, where he's going to be a missionary and teach awesome missionary kids math. So send him love, send him encouragement, and we also, if you want, we have the link available if you would like to even send money to help him in that journey. But this week we'll have Noah speaking for us, so he's going to kill that. We'll have a fun game, and again, we're super patriotic, so it's going to be 4th of July themed. So come and be a part of that. We do have D groups again this Thursday, 12 to 2, so bring your lunch, bring your lawn chair, and come hang out with our awesome interns. And then lastly, we are still working on what camp's going to look like in this weird time. There's just a lot of craziness, a lot of parts that we have to kind of put together to make that work. But keep your eye out on our social media for all the information on that.